Hello and welcome to Lab Roots, The Life of Her Mind, an interview series devoted to learning how women think about their research, their field, and their future. My name is Mia Wood. I'm a philosophy professor working at the intersection of philosophy and, well, everything else, especially the sciences. The first season of The Life of Her Mind originally aired in 2022 on Lab Roots' YouTube channel. Now in 2025, I'm excited to announce that we're bringing back the series. The podcast will continue to explore the lives, careers, and minds of women in science across the globe. To reintroduce the series, we're representing our original episodes with updates for our listeners. In our second episode, which premiered in October of 2022, I spoke with planetary physicist Dr. Alyssa Rhoden, who specializes in the geophysics of icy moons. After holding posts at Arizona State University, Johns Hopkins University, and NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center, Dr. Rosen has been the principal scientist within the Planetary Science Directorate at SWIRL, that's Southwest Research Institute in Boulder, Colorado. Dr. Rhoden is not only committed to advancing knowledge of icy moons, she is also committed to advancing students' careers. Dr. Rhoden is always open to giving advice to budding scientists searching for their place in the field of their choice, not only because she is enthusiastic about the power of sharing knowledge and experience, but also because she knows how daunting it can be to figure out what's going to work for one's own particular situation. So tune in to the second episode of The Life of Her Mind to learn what and how Dr. Alyssa Rhoden thinks. Let's find out about the life of her mind. For more information on Dr. Rhoden's work and links to resources, check out our show notes. Hello and welcome to Lab Roots, The Life of Her Mind, an interview series devoted to learning how women think about their research, their field, and their future. Let's get started. Today, we're in conversation with Dr. Alyssa Rhoden, principal scientist at Southwest Research. Southwest Research.
Just say SWIRI. SWIRI is fine. Yeah.
Principal scientist at SWIRI in Boulder, Colorado. Dr. Rhoden previously held posts at Arizona State University, where she was an assistant professor of planetary science, Johns Hopkins University, where she was a member of the Europa Clipper pre-project team in Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab, and a NASA postdoc, and then mission scientist at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. Dr. Rhoden completed her BS in physics with minors in math and planetary science at the University of Arizona in Tucson. Go Cats! And her PhD in Earth and planetary science at Berkeley. Her dissertation, The Rotation and Fracture History of Europa, from modeling of tidal tectonic processes, set the stage for her current work at SWIRI. Hello, Dr. Rhoden, and welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for coming back to Lab Roots. I say coming back because my Lab Roots colleague, Lawrence Tognetti, profiled you in a piece entitled Icy Moon Geophysicist, Mom, and Guitar Player. How did that interview come about?
Well, Lawrence and I go way back. He was an undergraduate at ASU when I was a professor there, and he took a couple of my classes. And one of the things I learned about Lawrence is that he's an incredibly tenacious person. So he didn't stop at taking a class. He found a way to join my research group, do a project, and we've really been in touch ever since. And you know, what I've learned about Lawrence is that what drives him fundamentally is wanting to do good in the world. And that's the kind of person that I am going to support all the way. So he asked me to do an interview and I said, absolutely.
Awesome. Wonderful. And, you know, I definitely want to get to the various aspects of the title of that profile along with other items. Sure. Let's start with Icy Moon. So did you pick Europa? Because being an icy moon geophysicist sounds really freaking cool. For those of us who know nothing about it.
No, I wish I could say that I did, but no, actually, So it's a bit of a backstory situation, but so I started in college in a physics major. I really struggled in physics. I did not have an easy time, and I decided that I was going to quit physics. I decided that I should do something that I was more gifted at, had more natural ability for, and I should let the clearly genius scientists in the room take over for me in physics. Because of that, I found planetary science, and when I did, it changed completely my feelings towards science. I realized that the things that were missing for me in physics and astronomy were still there in planetary, and specifically the fact that you have tangible objects to look at and be curious about. It was much easier for me to get excited about Europa and Enceladus, all the planetary surfaces, and wonder what is going on there. Than to think about dark matter, gravitational lensing, the kinds of bigger picture things that the astrophysicists get really excited about. But for me, it was a little bit too abstract and couldn't see it. So I applied for a NASA, what do they call it? Space grant fellowship. So this is where NASA pairs an undergraduate student with a scientist at a university. I put in my application during a very difficult period in my life. I thought, surely I won't get in. And I remember the day that I got the envelope, and I thought I was having a rough time. And I was just like, man, the last thing I need is a rejection letter today. And then I thought, wait a minute, it's a big envelope. They don't send the rejection letters in the big envelopes. So sure enough, I had been selected. They paired me with a professor named Richard Greenberg at University of Arizona. And he is the person who introduced me to Europa. Before I started working with him, I did not know that Europa had an ocean. I did not know about its gravitational interactions with its other neighboring moons. I didn't know really anything other than planetary science is cool and I like it. And so we worked together for 5 years through the end of my undergrad and then while I was applying to graduate school. And so that is how I came to love Europa.
So you mentioned that you believed, maybe it's true, but you at least believed that you weren't very good at physics.
Yeah.
And yet you're still getting, I don't know if it's by a different route or just thinking about it differently, or if truly studying planets is different from the physics done, let's say in like cosmology and other areas. But so I'm having a hard time thinking about how you do what you do, and yet, which is really tough, and yet you say you weren't very good at.
Yeah, right. So I think this is the challenge, probably in a lot of fields, but certainly my experience in physics and astronomy. There's this feeling that either you are gifted and you can do this, or you're not, right? And you shouldn't be there. And I don't know how much of that comes from the top versus how much we allow ourselves to believe is from the bottom. But that was how I felt. I needed a lot of help. I needed a lot of support. I needed to go to tutoring sessions. I needed to go, meet with my professors. And it seemed like most of the students who are my peers didn't do that. And they just kind of got it. And, what I came to realize through research and through working with Rick in particular was that I just have a different style of thinking about problems and I have different talents. And the tough thing is they're not necessarily the easy ones to gauge with an exam or, with test scores or grades. I'm at heart a creative person and I think about problems holistically and I like to put ideas together. And that's actually been really fundamental to my success in obtaining funding, because it turns out writing proposals is a creative process. I've been able to build really amazing teams of people to work together because I have very strong interpersonal skills. Also not a thing that gets touted a lot in science. So when I say I had trouble, maybe I didn't have more trouble than anyone else, but I felt it more acutely because the way I was different made me feel like maybe I'm just wrong for science, right? And now I feel very differently. I think that no, I will never be the analytical, standard old white man, right? In an office alone with lots of books, writing equations. Like, that's not who I am. But I can contribute to science in a different way. And I have found people who also contribute to science in different ways. And what I realized is that if we only have models of one kind of scientist, we will only create one kind of scientist, and we can only solve that one kind of problem. So that's how I reconcile those two facets.
So a bunch of really interesting things are going on. I definitely want to press on the connection to creativity, but first, when you started talking about how you weren't, in your own mind anyway, whether it was top down or just sort of out there in culture, sort of the standard science student, and I was thinking about what for me comes to mind is what I hear from logic students in my discipline, philosophy. You know, they think that if they don't get it right away, that somehow there's something wrong with them. You know, and I say, well, we've got sort of two camps of learner. We've got the people who just get it and they don't understand why other people don't get it. And there's a benefit to that, but there's also a big drawback. And then, you know, the people who don't get it right away, but who work really hard. And then the benefit to that is they can explain it, which, right. So,
right. We tend to be the better teachers because we have more understanding of the challenge and where people might get stuck. And yeah, I totally think the people who are just gifted, just naturally get it. They should definitely follow that. If that's their passion, like definitely do that. But it's not the only path. Like you said, it's not the only way to get there. And more importantly, as I was saying before, I think we need both kinds because the way that you're going to express your skill set is going to be completely different. So, yeah, I agree with you.
And piggybacking off of that, two more threads come to mind. One is I'm curious about the fact that you were nevertheless tenacious. Like you didn't just say, oh, well, I'm going to go into the music program because I play guitar, right? I'm going to leave science altogether. You stuck with the sciences. So that's one point of interest. And then the other has to do with sort of developing the different ways of doing the same thing. And I was thinking when I'd like to ask you about your time in academia, you still, obviously you are a researcher, but now principally, so literally.
Yes.
And you know, how it is that a lot of people, I think, get maybe pushed out of academic life because there's this pressure in research institutions, you know, to publish, and maybe in the physical sciences, there's a sort of bright burning star that burns out rather quickly, whereas in other disciplines, it takes quite a good number of years to develop stuff that you think is worth publishing. So I'm curious about your thinking about being able to work at a pace that I think is, I don't know if pace is the right word, but I want to ask you also about whether or not you think that not having the pressure, the tenure pressure, helps you do better work overall. But first, you say something about why'd you stick with it? Why not? Because you're a guitar player.
So it's funny that the guitar thing keeps coming up because I only started playing guitar about 3.5 years ago. Oh. So that's a new thing. Okay. But I was always an artist. So when I first started undergrad, I was trying to be a physics major with an art minor. And that was my original plan. I wanted to do studio art. My mom was an artist she was a teacher, but she was also an artist. She went to an art school for high school. And so this was a thread that had been going through my life. Unfortunately, studio art and physics have something in common, which is that they both require 3-hour-long 1-credit lab courses in addition to whatever else you're doing. So very quickly, I ran out of time to actually do studio art and physics together. So but I picked up guitar about 3.5 years ago, and it was really wonderful. It was the first time regarding an instrument where I picked something up and I actually figured it out. Whereas I played violin for 8 years as a young person, and it just was just as bad at the end as it was at the beginning. So I have a guitar in my office. It's over there. Her name is Stella.
Her name is what?
Stella.
Stella?
Stella, yeah. So it's been a really lovely thing to add into my repertoire. But to get to your initial question, why did I stick with it? The big reason was that I fell in love with planets. So when I decided to quit physics, I signed up to be a pre-law. That was what I was going to go into instead. I thought, I'm good with people. I'm good with talking, debating. This will be a good fit. And in order to go down that route, I needed to take a natural science elective course. And I ended up signing up for whatever was available, which happened to be a class with this very grand name, Universe and Humanity, Origin and Destiny. Sounds very cool.
Yes.
And yeah, the first day that I went, the professor did a tour of the solar system. And it was the first time I'd seen a lot of the images of the moons of planets. I'd seen, the planets for a long time. And I just didn't realize how much more we knew than we had known when I was a little kid. And I was fascinated. And by the end of that semester, I just felt like this is the thing that I want to study. This is the thing that I'm passionate about. And I just had all this fear that maybe I'm never going to be able to do it because I got a C in calculus. My mom told me, you'll never get into grad school. That's what she said. And so I was really scared. Like maybe I won't finish my degree. Maybe I'm not going to get into grad school. Maybe, but I thought, I might as well just go until I can't go anymore. So that's kind of how I went along. I will say things changed for me a little bit. When I turned 23, I had a midlife crisis. I didn't get into grad school the first year that I applied, despite having applied to 9 schools and having first author papers and all the things. I got rejected from everywhere. And I was like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, And my mom passed away young. And so when I hit 23, I started realizing like, man, she was through half her life when she was 23. And if I was through half my life, like, this is not a question you want to ask at 23. Like, not, unless you're like an Olympic athlete or a celebrity of some kind, 23 is a bad time to be thinking about this. But I was just like, man, I haven't been able to do anything in my life. And I've always been trying to get through school and take care of my family and all these things. And so I came to this place of like, I can't just do one thing. I cannot just do one thing because then life will be over and I'll have only done that. And so I made this commitment to myself that even though I wanted to try to continue in planetary science, I was also going to travel. I was also going to be an artist. I was also going to have a family. I was also going to do all of these things. And, if it meant that I didn't go as far or as fast as other people, that was okay with me because I needed to just live today and now and not wait.
Sticking with it. So there's something interesting, I think, about how you were by the time you got to planetary sciences. In other words, you weren't sort of a wilting flower that went, oh, I'm no good at physics, I'm going to go run off and do something else. It's clear that you had enough confidence in your intellect to say, well, I still am interested in these other things, and this is rather fascinating, so I'm going to pursue it as far as I can go. And then now, how did you end up recovering from the grad school rejections? Because again, a lot of folks might just say, oh, well, this is some sort of sign that I don't belong in this, discipline. I mean, what got you through?
Yeah. This is a good question, but it also makes me chuckle because to this day, I have days where I think, maybe I'm just not good enough. Maybe this is a sign, my proposal didn't get funded. I didn't get an early career award. I haven't been invited to give a fancy talk. Like there are an infinite number of things. Mm-hmm. And every time one of those things comes up, there's that feeling of like, maybe this is the proof that I was never supposed to be here. And so now I'm able to say, so I'm here, right? I'm here. And people want to work with me and people find my work interesting. And, if I wasn't good enough or wasn't meant to be, okay, but I'm here, so I'm going to stay and I'm going to dig in and do it. As for back then, it was incredibly difficult. I had just confidence crisis after confidence crisis through all the end of undergrad, trying to finish my degree in physics, never feeling like I had aptitude for physics. Not getting into graduate school was a huge blow. And the second time I applied, I got into one, Berkeley, and that's it. And I remember saying to Rick that, gosh, what did I trick them? Like, how did they, why did they allow me in? And he said, well, I just have to wonder how everyone else didn't see it. And, he's the reason that I'm a scientist. Like, he saw something in me. He never let me doubt it. He always believed that I could do this. And really, just about every good thing in my career has come from the fact that I worked with Rick. My postdoc advisor was his graduate student. We met and became close friends and collaborators then. We are still close collaborators. He called me just as we were getting on the phone. We talk almost every day. And same with my job at Swery, the person I went to come out here and have a little bit of a summer break, which led to me being hired, is someone that I met through Rick. And he really put a lot of effort into introducing me to people, to kind of not really sales pitching, but like making sure people knew I was giving a talk, talking about my research. He really taught me what it meant to be a scientist and how to network and all of those things. So I don't think I would have stayed if I hadn't had someone who so clearly believed in me.
In a new way, or helping yourself get unstuck if you're stuck, or something else. Like how does creativity play into your research?
So there are a few ways, and in some ways they're very distinct, and I do them differently and I think about them differently. But there are a few overlaps. And one is that in both cases, I need space to just let my mind kind of wander and meander, go where it's going to go. If I'm sitting down, in front of an iPad and I want to do a drawing, or I've got my sketchbook, I can't just sit down and say, well, what am I going to do? Okay, I'm going to make a house today and this is what it's going to look like in it, right? I have to kind of move the pencil. Mm-hmm. I have to look around. I have to put music on it. And it's just like being able to pull from all the different sources of stimuli really helped me create something. Same is true in science. I talk to my colleagues, not even about science sometimes, just go to the coffee room and have a chat. I go for walks, I get coffee. Sometimes I work in a different environment, and all of that helps my mind to just sort of flow and be really free. And usually that's when I come up with my best ideas. I go for a walk, brain is going, children are playing, there's a creek, there's a duck, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I know the way I'm going to say this. I know the way I'm going to say this in this paper, or I know the way I'm going to put this into a presentation. So in that way, needing that freedom and that flow is important in both cases. I think the other thing that overlaps is that I tend to think about composition, mm-hmm. and not like carbon composition, mm-hmm. but, the picture as a whole. Mm-hmm. So whether I am thinking about a picture that I want to create, or a song, sometimes I'm trying to write songs, so thinking about lyrics, or I'm trying to put together a new proposal idea or work through a problem. I'm always thinking about how does the whole thing come together, right? And that's the starting point. And then I can take each piece individually and say, okay, how am I going to tackle this one individual thing? But I have a very big picture thinker, and really not so much the little things.
Do you find kind of once you've got the composition, the structure, do you end up getting lost in the weeds and like walking or playing music or something kind of gets you back out, so that you can see again? Or is it more the case that once you've got it. You don't get lost in the weeds because you maintain the whole at the same
Right.
time.
That's more of it. So because I have the structure in my head, the composition in my head, then I feel free to focus on something. And yeah, maybe I do get into the weeds, but that's okay because, I'm stippling something to create shading, right? Like you need to focus on that. But if I try to do it the other way, if I try to sit down and just do one piece of something, I get very frustrated. I have a really hard time. I don't feel like I'm making progress. I have to step back and have that sense of like, how does this fit? Why is this important? And a close friend once said to me, you only like to do things that matter. And I think in a way that's at the heart of it. It's like, I have to see how this fits into something that I'm building. Otherwise I just can't put the energy into it. I can't connect with it. Yeah.
Now you're a mom as well. So
Yes.
does this also apply there, or like, do you compartmentalize? How do you do all of it? Because
oh my gosh,
principal scientist, and mom and advisor. I mean, you've got
yes, and I'm training for a triathlon, and I'm in a band, and I know it's kind of crazy. Yeah. So how do I do all the things? Well, first I allow myself to do things badly. And I maybe badly is the wrong way, but like I allow myself to screw up, to do things 80% of the way, and that helps a lot. So quite literally, I'm 70% time at my job. I don't work over that very often. And that creates a lot more space for me to do other things. When I'm not at work, most of my time is spent as a mom. I'm divorced. I have my kids about 70% of the time. So that translates to one night off a week. And the rest of the time I'm feeding my kids and getting them ready for school. And I was late to this meeting this morning because, I needed to pack their lunches, and then it was swim day. And so we had to find all their swim gear, and then we drive all the way across town. And so, it is a lot. And I'm accepting of myself being 5 minutes late to things. I'm accepting of myself, not always being on top of everything. And if I can do everything that I'm trying to do at least 80% of the way, feel okay. It's pretty good. But no, I don't compartmentalize very much at all. And I never have. As soon as I had my son, Henry, it's my oldest, I just changed. I hadn't been certain I wanted to be a mom for a lot of reasons. And as soon as I had him, I realized, no, this is the thing that I'm going to put my life into. And I still wanted to have a career. I wanted to be a role model to him for what women can be. I wanted to make sure he didn't feel the pressure of being my whole world. I wanted him to know he could be whoever he needs to be. And I've got my own gig going on. And I love what I do. But I always wanted my children to have as much of me as they needed. And so they've gone on conference trips with me. They've been in my classes. When I taught the first day, you go through the syllabus, right? First day of class. And I always also put in a little bit about myself. Here's who I am. Here's what I study. And it's great because I study moons, right? And so then I would always put up pictures of my kids, talk about how I have 2 little satellites of my own that orbit me. And, and some people probably don't like it. Some people think maybe I'm not professional enough, or I'm not serious enough, or whatever. I don't care. Like, who I want to be is someone who is a mom and loves her kids and is a super involved parent and is a scientist. And that means I'm going to be messy, and I'm going to be late, and I'm going to talk about my kids a lot. And some people won't like it, and that's okay, because that's who I am.
Well, and the fact that our social structure has been created, has been sustained as it is for so long, makes us think that, not having kids at work, or not talking about kids, or not bringing your full self to your work is somehow, that's the way it's supposed to be. And I find that to be, I'm like, well, why?
Right. Why? Yes.
That's a better way to do it. Why isn't this other way just as
Right.
good?
And, that's interesting because in some ways, you're encouraged to bring other aspects of yourself. People get really impressed with you if you work and you are training for a marathon. They're like, oh my gosh, look, this person's dedicated and strong and like all these great things. But if you're like, oh, I have to leave early because my kid's in a play, they're like, man, why are you so undedicated? Right. It's a very strange thing. It's very odd. But this is something I learned from my sister, actually. She has always brought 100% of who she is everywhere that she goes. And, sometimes it's caused problems for her. And she's still like, no, this is who I am and take it or leave it. And I admire that a lot. And I've tried to learn from her that it's okay. It's okay if who I am isn't going to fit in the expectation box or the conventional box. And I will find my space and I'll find my people and it's okay.
Well, and I hope anyway that in maybe another, I don't know if I'm being optimistic, but another, 3 generations, there won't be a strict quote unquote normal, right? There will be room for everyone so that we actually get the best of all the worlds, right? Which will make all of our lives better, I would think. And that also maybe again tangentially, but brings me to a question about leaving research in an academic setting or in a university setting and going into the nonprofit. SWERI is nonprofit.
It's technically a nonprofit, but it's the same way that the Applied Physics Lab is a nonprofit. A lot of these research institutions where, yes, it's not for profit, but it's not like the nonprofit that people generally think of where you're out like helping feed the world. Like we're not doing that. So yeah, there were a lot of things that prompted my decision to leave ASU to come to SWERI. And some of them are more individual and unique to that situation. And some I think are quite general. For one thing, I struggled in Arizona. I didn't enjoy living there. I wanted to raise my kids in a place where their big feelings would be more accepted. And, they're also very creative individuals and quite sensitive. And I felt like Arizona was not a supportive environment for them. Whereas here, they show up to the dog park dressed in Link costumes and, have sword fights and people love it. People think that it's great and they engage with the kids and it's been a much better place for them. And Boulder's also a better place for me. It's cooler and you could be outside all the time, which is really wonderful for me. I love being around water. Arizona, not known for that. Yeah, right. And don't get me wrong, like there's a lot of great things about Arizona too. But this, when I visited, just felt like a much better fit for me and for where my family was at the time. But I think in the general sense, academia, the university environment still has a lot of catching up to do to make it possible to be a thriving professor and a family person, right? And that's true for men as well. The system was built on the idea that you were going to have men who either didn't have kids or had a wife at home to take care of their kids. So you did not have to be worrying about taking care of your house, buying groceries, cooking dinner, childcare, none of that. And even as we've evolved to a place where universities are much more accepting of women having babies and being professors, or men who are really involved and have wives who are scientists or professors or whatnot, the infrastructure, the rules are still mostly on the books from a time when expectations were very different than they are today. So some challenges that I faced. So I had a 3-year-old when I got the job and I was 6 months pregnant. So yeah, the first year I had an infant. Yeah. And he would not take a bottle. So I was driving back and forth to feed him. Later, I was able to find a nanny who could drive him to campus so I could nurse while, between meetings. And it was a lot, it was a lot. people ask how I do it now, and I'm like, well, it's so much easier now than it was then. And so, there were a lot of rules that made it hard. I was given a really nice not signing bonus, but what do they call it? So a funding package when I took the job to help me start my research group and all this. There's a 3-year cutoff. You got to spend the money in the first 3 years. Okay, great. So I've got to hire people. I've got to have students. So I'm growing a research group and I'm spending all this money, but that means I can't be slow about it. I can't step in at a different pace because I have this baby at home who needs me. Similarly, most universities will allow you to extend your tenure clock if you have a baby, but the way it's implemented can vary. The way ASU implemented it, you just add a year at the end if you feel like you need it. And that makes sense if you have a kid in your 4th year or your 6th year. But if you have a baby in your 1st year, it's like, well, that doesn't make me feel better now. It doesn't. And the mid-tenure review, which happens at about, basically you turn paperwork around 2.5 years, that does not have an extension added to it. Mm-hmm. So I was going to be, assessed in the same way and against the same metrics as everyone else who did not have a baby in their 1st year. Right? So it's those little things where if you're a university and you want to be a place where women can come in and have kids and be moms, or you want to have dads who are super involved, you can't stop at the hiring point, right? You need to be really intentional and thoughtful of how this person is going to face different challenges than your traditional staff. Mm-hmm. And you need to be proactive about making sure that they have access to support, that you listen to them when they say, I need this, right? And be willing to have things look different, right? You can't say, well, this is what we give everyone, therefore we can't give you something else. Mm-hmm. It's like, no, everybody's going to need something different. Mm-hmm. And the field has run into this problem also with hiring people from underrepresented groups, right? So there was a university that wanted to hire a Black professor. We don't have one. We need one. Right? Okay, great, wonderful idea. Except they couldn't, because every professor they wanted to interview said, "Well, I don't want to work here. There's nobody who looks like me, right?" Like that means the environment might be toxic. It means y'all haven't been doing very much to increase diversity. So I don't know what I'm going to be up against. It means I'm going to be the Black person that you want to be on all the committees so that you have diversity of that, right? And that's a whole lot more pressure, right? And then it's not clear that that unconscious bias has been dealt with so that you're going to be reviewed fairly, that you're going to receive your promotions fairly, right? Like it's tough to come into that environment. It's that same kind of thing. And people have learned that if you want to hire more minorities, you have to do cluster hires. You have to do more to show that like you're committed beyond, well, we added somebody right to our staff. So I think it's as we broaden our access by race, gender, sexual orientation, how much a mom you want to be, right? We have to really work to make sure that the institutions can support what people need.
And you find, so you mentioned that, yes, now as your children are getting older, but they're still young, things are less chaotic in terms of juggling, right? But still you've got a lot to juggle. How was there room at places like Swery to basically to negotiate for a work environment that allows you to take care of other important things, which in turn makes the work that you produce, ideally that much better?
Yeah. So that's the interesting thing. Part of the difference between the university environment and this environment comes from the fact that in the university environment, it's fairly rare for women who are professors to have kids. Right? When you come out of that environment and you go to research institutes, most of the women I know in research institutes have kids. And it's similar with how involved dads are, right? There are many more involved dads in the research institute sector than the university professor sector. And I think that that is part of the issue. So it was no big deal to come to SWRI and say, I can't be full time. I've got 2 kids at home and I need some extra sick leave because, you know, from day one, I'm going to have kids who are going to get sick. And so I can't wait 2 years to like build up a bank of sick leave. Right. So, and the person I was negotiating with is a mom. She has 2 kids and she does this job and she takes on way more than I do. Right? The, the management leader, the section leader, mom with 2 kids, right? Most of the women I work with have children. Most of the men that I work with have children. And so it just naturally becomes a more compassionate environment. Everyone understands what the demands are. If you go to, so at ASU, for example, I went to them, I said, well, I might need to pump, right? Now I've learned over time that many men and many women have no idea what pumping is or that it's a thing. Many, okay, because it's not a thing they've ever dealt with. So for any of your listeners who don't know, when you have a baby and you need to feed it and you're away from it, you have a pump and that holds the milk, which you then feed your baby. Okay, so until you've had this experience, you just don't know. And it's a huge pain in the butt. If you travel, you need a place to do this. If you go to a colloquium on someone else's campus, you need a break and a place to do this. Pumps are either manual, which takes forever, or you need a place with a plug, okay, which airports often don't have, right? So once you have a baby, if you're nursing, if you're bottle feeding with breast milk, you have to have this huge like mental thing devoted to how you're going to feed your baby, right? ASU has 1 pumping room on campus. 1. So, right. And so it was a real challenge. Now, luckily, my baby didn't take a bottle, so I didn't have to worry that much about it. But I had to worry about transporting him. Right. So I had, there was a point to this. So when you're in an environment where lots of people are parents, it's a really easy conversation to have. Hey, where's the pumping room? Oh, it's over there. How do you sign up for it? Oh, this is it. When you go to a place where no one is a parent and that's not their experience, and you say, hey, I'm going to need to pump. And they say, well, can't you do that in the bathroom? Right. And you have to explain, no, I can't do that in the bathroom. Or there was one postdoc at ASU who came to me. I wasn't working with her, but she was pregnant. I'd obviously been pregnant. And she says, hey, I have a cubicle in a room with a bunch of other people. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And I said, well, we'll find you a place to pump, or I will come and sit in the lobby with you and we'll pump in the lobby. And I bet they'll find us a place. And, luckily they did, because again, I'm trying not to be hard on them. It wasn't like ASU didn't want to be supportive. Right. And they have these things kind of in place and in motion, but they're just not there yet. So for me to come in and try to be successful, it was very challenging.
Well, and I don't think you're being hard on them if we say, well, hang on a second here. Why is the default position you having to go to your employers, supervisors, whatever, dean, and say, hey, this is what I need, instead of them, and then saying, well, can't you do? Right. Instead of them saying, okay, we have no idea what you might need beyond these things. Can you tell us how we can help you? What can we do for
Exactly.
That I think would be the nice change.
Yeah, that would be a useful change. Yeah, and this comes up in other areas too. I'm in a professional society that runs a conference every year, and one day I was on the organizing committee, and I said, okay, what are we going to do for pumping and nursing? And they said, oh, well, we put a thing on the website that says, if you need special accommodations, email, info at such and such. And I said, no, that's not going to work, because imagine humble me, right? I need to think about my breasts. Not a thing I really want to email info at about, right? It's going to go to someone who could actually be like a man who doesn't know anything about lactation, who also maybe is going to decide whether my grant gets funded. And now I'm making him super uncomfortable because I'm writing this blanket email about like breastfeeding. I said, you need to have a specific language that says for lactation needs or for nursing moms or something that's very clear that this is going to go to a person who understands your needs, right? You've got to have somebody in place who can be a true, ambassador and person you can reach out to. And the person I was talking to was a woman, but she never had kids. She'd never had to deal with this. And she was like, you're right. I would never have known. If someone sent me an email saying, where's the pumping room? I would not have even had any clue what the needs would be or how it would work. Right. So this is the kind of thing where you just need critical mass of people with the same experience before you're going to get that stuff to be easy. At SWERI, at APL, at some of the other institutes that I worked there, because there are so many more families and being family oriented is much more common. You don't have to have the same barrier, right? That same, gotta just first explain what I even need. And so that definitely made it easier to be here as a parent than to be there.
Now, speaking of needs, and there are some other, far less important questions like about, Europa, but I would be remiss if I didn't get to some incredibly important questions.
Good. Okay.
About donuts.
Good. Yes.
Yes. So, where did the donuts go?
Let me tell you about donuts.
Yes, right. Snack donuts.
Yes. So the story with the donuts is this. Every Friday at 9:15, everyone here in the SWERI Division 15 group has the opportunity to go to the conference room and get a donut. And these are not junk donuts. These are Lamar's donuts, and they're amazing. Okay, so we get our donuts, we go into the conference room, and our fearless leader, Bill Bakke, goes through the week's headlines in space science news. And it's incredible because for the most part, there's someone in the room who is an expert in that particular area or, reviewed that paper or just hates everything about it. And so there's all these interesting discussions, and we go whatever's in the headlines. Could be heliophysics, so sun stuff, could be astrophysics, could be exoplanets, could be Europa. Lots of we found water on Mars. That seems to be a recurring theme, that we found water on Mars. But it's great because you get to really see what everyone's expertise is. Mm-hmm. It's a very casual environment. It's a bit snarky. So you get to really learn people's personalities. You get to learn what the sort of pet peeves are, or what the big questions are in science. So what are people arguing about in the Mars community? I don't know. I don't do Mars, right? But I learn about it in this way. And so it's a really fun way to get to know your colleagues. And there have been some good opportunities where at the end of it, I went up to someone and said, hey, what you were saying was really interesting. Have you ever thought about doing it this way? So it's an opportunity for us to really be interdisciplinary and cross-fertilize, I think that's the new word of the decade is now it's cross-fertilize.
Any donut holes or just?
Full donuts. Holes, no. We get full-on donuts. The glazed is the best, but we get cream filled and maple. There's also bagels. There's also fruit if you're gluten-free. We're very inclusive, and coffee. And it's delightful. It was something that I really missed when we were all working from home through the pandemic. SWERI in particular does a lot to get people talking to each other. And it's not always in these very formal, rigid ways where we're only talking about science. We have a big monthly lunch where we sit together and we all go to a restaurant, and you just sit with people you might never otherwise talk to. Mm-hmm. And we have a monthly pizza lunch where two people will come in and give talks about literally anything, right? So it's not just your science. We had one person come and talk about the presentation he gave at Comic-Con about how Martians have been represented through history, like why are they always green and how have they changed?
Cool.
Yeah, we have one guy who his hobby is recreating Star Wars memorabilia. So he actually, yeah, tracks down like they used this type of, tape wheel, and then they glued something to it, and then they used this lens cover, and now we've created the blaster, right? So he brought in a bunch of his stuff, and we got to see. He's got a Wookiee in his office, I think, and a bunch of stuff. We had a woman whose son is autistic, and she came in and talked about autism and how to talk to someone who has autism and what the challenges are. So it's really like more personal than what did you present at LPSC this year. So they do a lot to really get us talking to each other, and it was very difficult when we were all remote. I don't think I realized quite how much of that energy I sort of soak up and get excited about science and get excited to think about new problems.
Now, did you so you're also a storyteller. You
I yeah.
you participated in the moth when you told me about that. I fangirled all over the place. So exciting. And it was a terrific story. Is that something, forgive me because I don't remember the date. Did you do
Oh, I don't know.
that during the pandemic? Was this after
Uh,
participating in these sorts of informal events at work, or totally separate?
no. So I started going to the Moth soon after I started working here. So I moved to Boulder. I changed my whole life. I got divorced. I became a single mom. Moved again. Like everything was in upheaval. And then I started to kind of settle into my new life. And the Moth was something that I had listened to on NPR on the radio.
Mhm.
And I don't know why, but one day I thought, I wonder, they say that there are live story slams. Maybe I should look into this. And there was one in Denver. I went absolutely nuts. I was like, definitely going to this. And the very first one I ever went to is their traditional Valentine's Day uh, theme, which is Love Hurts. I went with my now dearest friend, Julian, who works here with me. And, we were both single. So it was like, Love Hurts on Valentine's Day sounds perfect. Um, and it was just an amazing experience. People telling these stories. They're 5 minutes long, totally off the cuff, no notes, right? I mean, you could practice in your head, but no notes when you get up there, and you're telling a story of something that happened to you, a true experience. And they were just so amazing. And everyone in the room, you feel the ways in which we're all connected, the ways in which these things translate. And it was a wonderful experience. So after that, I started going religiously every month. I would go to the Moth, and it took a long time before I worked up the courage to tell a story. And I told a story at Love Hurts in February of 2020. That story won the Story Slam, and then everything shut down.
Well, at least you ended the pre-pandemic.
Yes, on a high. They did a good job. So I did that story, and then there was nothing for a long time. And then I came back when they restarted again earlier this year. I think it was when they finally restarted, and it was funny because the scores from Love Hurts were still on the board
Nice.
from pre-pandemic, but it was wonderful. Even wearing masks, even having to socially distance and all the things. It was wonderful to still be in that environment. So since then, I've done three slams. I've not won any, but that's okay.
You're back into it.
Yeah, I'm back into it. I'm having a great time. I'm gonna do Happy, the next one in August, and I think that'll be a fun one.
Yeah, there are a number of themes that I think have been running through this conversation, but one of them I'd like to pull because it also allows me to ask you a question about Europa specifically, but more specifically dealing with stuff that's like really far away.
Yeah.
So you mentioned early on that the abstract nature of so much of what astrophysicists do, is just it's off-putting, and you want something that you can sort of wrap your arms around. And you've also made a few remarks about the sort of the benefits of sociability to your work and your work life. But here you are studying something that is really far away. Like when I think about outer space, I think, wow, this is really cool. It allows me to remind myself that, oh, thank goodness, I'm just a little speck. I don't matter. There's the universe. It's going on without me. Woof, relief. But
Same.
for,
Same.
it's big and it's
It's
far
big.
away. And how do you wrap your arms around that? How do you get intimate with it, if you will?
Yeah, it's a good question. And there isn't necessarily a clear answer. Some of my friends and colleagues, they see a galaxy and they think, why? How? I want to know it. Right. I look at a galaxy and I'm like, that's pretty. Like I don't know why. Right? I don't know why. But I think everybody connects differently with things, and what you find inspiring is going to be different. So I think there is just a fundamental side of what draws you in. But in particular for me, like, yes, the moons of Jupiter are far away, the moons of Saturn are far away, but they are reachable with spacecraft.
Mm.
So I have been using Galileo images, Cassini images, and it's like being there, right? I mean, I can see the surface, I can see what it looks like. As we start to go back to some of these places, we're going to see how things have changed. So Europa Clipper is the next big flagship mission that NASA is sending. It's I think going to launch in a year or something. Like, it's really close now, and those will be the first comprehensive images and data sets that we'll have for Europa since Galileo in the late 90s. Right. So there's going to be an opportunity to see more, to see how things have changed. And that's the piece that really starts to pull me in. Right. You can actually go and observe, test your hypotheses, know for sure. Right. And that's true for everything in the solar system. We can get there, we can see it, we can figure it out. That helps me a lot.
What is your if there is one, what is your one sort of big hope over the next like 10 years? What question do you want to answer?
Hmm. So it's tough because 10-year questions are actually kind of hard.
Well,
because
range. I know
because
I threw this one
yeah,
out.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's funny because if you're speaking to a general audience, the kinds of big picture questions you want to answer will take decades, right? Like, there's a Uranus mission that we're going to develop that's not going to be there till I've probably retired, right? So a lot of the bigger picture questions that are, it's clear why they matter, are going to take too long to answer in 10 years. But for me, for the next 5 to 10 years, the question I find most fascinating is, how did Saturn's moons form? So Saturn has a bunch of what we call mid-sized moons. So they're actually pretty small. They orbit from closest to Saturn, about 3 Saturn radii away is the closest one, out to maybe 10 or 14. So they're the close-in moons. Mimas is the smallest. It's has a radius, so it's a diameter of about 400 kilometers. 400 kilometers, it's not a lot of kilometers, right? And its neighbor Enceladus is only about 20% bigger. If you drew Enceladus on a map of the world, it would cover the British Isle. It's small. Okay, so these are mid-sized moons, pretty small moons, and yet they all have a history of geologic activity. Europa has a global ocean under its ice shell. It has geysers that's actively spewing that water out into the Saturn system, where it actually freezes and forms a little ring of ice particles. Mimas, which looks like the Death Star, is looking more seriously. It does. If you look up Death Star moon, you'll find Mimas. They look side by side. They look identical. But Mimas, we're starting to learn, may actually be an emerging ocean world itself. And it's one of these stealth ocean worlds where you would not know from looking at its surface what's lurking underneath. But we're finding more and more reason to think that it's at least a possibility, and we need to seriously consider it. When we look at Jupiter's moons, we don't see anything like this. Jupiter has 4 big moons, spread out much further than these moons of Saturn. They're big. They have this nice gradient where the rocky hot stuff is close to Jupiter and the cold, icy stuff is far away, right? The mid-sized moons do not obey that rule. They're like, whatever, we're doing our own thing. So it's, if you look at those two systems side by side, they're just totally different. And a lot of our models are good at explaining how the Jupiter system forms, but they don't really account for the way the Saturn system forms. And so it gives us a real opportunity to start thinking about, okay, how do we bring in our creativity, right? How do we think about this differently? And once we sort of cracked that open, it was like, okay, well, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, maybe it's this. And now we're having to go back and say, okay, well, how do we constrain it? How do we decide what really happened? And that tends to be where I come in, because I'm very data focused, and I could say, well, there's a big crater over here. You got to make that crater. So how do we do that? Right? What is the evolution, and what are all the things that happen in the history of these moons that get you here? Right. So I tend to sit at that interface between the theorists who are coming up with totally new ideas and the geologists who are like, this is what it looks like. And I sit in the middle going, all right, how are we gonna get these two together?
That's a really cool way to look at it.
That's the thing I would like to know. How did they form? How old are they? Which ones have oceans? And what does that mean when we look at exoplanets? When we look at 10,000 planets around other stars, just the tip of the iceberg of what's out there. Which ones are going to have planets? Which ones are going to have planets with moons? Which ones are going to have moons with oceans? What is the common way of building a system? What is the common type of world that you get? And so those are the questions that are driving me right now.
And I hope that when you answer them, you'll come back.
Absolutely. Lab roots all the way. Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I thank you for being not only so generous with your time, but also with your wit and your wisdom. Much appreciated. And again, seriously, I hope that I will be able to have an opportunity to chat with you again and learn more about your work, because
Sure.
your mind is fascinating.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And someday you'll have to interview my kids too, because they've got some great ideas.
All right. I will be ready as soon as
Right. They'll be ready real soon.
Excellent. All right.
Yeah.
Make sure you have my cell. We'll be good to
Yeah. All right, great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Since our 2022 interview, Dr. Rhoden has published a large number of articles in her field, has served on high-level planetary groups and committees, and has focused recent research efforts on the Saturn system. Be sure to check out our show notes for links to everything Dr. Rhoden's been working on, and see you next time on The Life of Her Mind when we talk to Dr. Kisha Supernant, a groundbreaking scientist revolutionizing the way we think about archaeology.